Dallas, Texas, November 22nd, 1963. The sun is shining, the crowds are cheering, and the President of the United States is riding in an open-top limousine. What could possibly go wrong? The official story is surgically simple. A disgruntled ex-Marine named Lee Harvey Oswald, perched on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, fired 3 shots from a mail-order rifle, and that was that. Case closed. America's handsome, charismatic leader was undone by a lone, sad man. It's a clean narrative. A little too clean, perhaps. It's the kind of story that feels less like history and more like a suspiciously tidy explanation your friend gives after breaking something expensive. The problem wasn't the conclusion. It was the mountain of sheer weirdness you had to climb to get there. Let's talk about the star of the show. Commission Exhibit 399, otherwise known as the Magic Bullet. This single piece of copper-jacketed lead performed feats that would make a circus acrobat blush. According to the Warren Commission, this one bullet passed through President Kennedy's neck, exited his throat, then decided to take a scenic detour. It paused in midair, changed direction, and struck Governor John Connally, who was sitting in front of Kennedy. It shattered Connally's 5th rib, exited his chest, smashed his right wrist, and finally came to a gentle rest in his left thigh. After this whirlwind tour of the human anatomy, the bullet was found on a stretcher at Parkland Hospital looking almost pristine. Not dented, not flattened, just ready for another go. It's not evidence. It's a cry for help from the laws of physics. And what of our shooter, Lee Harvey Oswald? He was a fascinating cocktail of contradictions. A former U.S. Marine trained as a radar operator who defected to the Soviet Union at the height of the Cold War. Because that's a normal career path. The Soviets found him so unstable they basically asked him to leave, after which he returned to the U.S. with a Russian wife, no questions asked. Once home, he started a one-man pro-Castro activist group in New Orleans, a city teeming with violently anti-Castro Cuban exiles. This is either the work of a criminal mastermind playing 4D chess or a man with the survival instincts of a dodo. He was a terrible employee, a loner, and somehow managed a rifle shot that expert marksmen have struggled to replicate. Oswald was simultaneously the perfect patsy and the most ill-conceived secret agent in history. Ah, the grassy knoll, the VIP section of American conspiracy theories. Dozens of witnesses in Dealey Plaza swore they heard shot coming from the picket fence atop this small hill to the president's right front. The famous Zapruder film, the only continuous visual record of the event, shows Kennedy's head violently snapping back and to the left, which, to anyone who has passed a high school physics class, suggests a force from the front. The Warren Commission chalked this up to a neuromuscular spasm, a very convenient, very specific spasm. Then there were the 3 tramps, a trio of mysterious men arrested near the knoll shortly after the assassination, photographed and then released without any records of their identities. They just vanished. The official story requires you to believe that a whole crowd of people simultaneously misheard and misremembered the most traumatic event of their lives. If you want a suspect with a motive, look no further than the mafia. It's an open secret that mob bosses like Chicago's Sam Giancana may have helped deliver Union votes for Kennedy in the tight 1960 election. They likely expected a friendly face in the White House. Instead, they got Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, the president's brother, who launched the most aggressive war on organized crime in U.S. history. From the mob's perspective, this was a spectacular betrayal. Figures like Santo Trafficante Jr. and Carlos Marcello, both major mob bosses targeted by RFK, had the means and the motive. The theory goes that the assassination wasn't just revenge, it was a business decision, a brutally effective way to remove a hostile CEO and install a more cooperative management. It's the kind of ruthless pragmatism that organized crime is famous for. Speaking of people mad at the Kennedys, let's turn to the anti-Castro Cuban exiles. In 1961, the CIA trained and equipped a force of them to invade Cuba at the Bay of Pigs. It was a complete disaster. Kennedy got cold feet and withheld crucial U.S. air support at the last minute, leaving the invaders to be captured or killed. The exiles felt utterly betrayed. They believed Kennedy had stabbed them in the back, and these were not people known for their forgiving nature. So you have a furious, well-armed group of trained fighters with CIA connections who hated Kennedy. And then you have Lee Harvey Oswald down in New Orleans loudly proclaiming his love for Castro. Was Oswald a genuine communist? A patsy set up by the exiles? A double agent? The possibilities are as numerous as they are headache-inducing. Of course, there's always the classic Cold War villain, the Soviet Union. On paper, it makes a kind of terrifying sense. The Cuban Missile Crisis had brought the world to the brink of nuclear annihilation just a year earlier. Kennedy had stared down Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev and won. What better way for the KGB to get even than by eliminating their chief adversary? Oswald, the former defector to the USSR with a Russian wife, was the perfect weapon. The problem with this theory is its sheer magnitude. Assassinating a U.S. president is not just an act of aggression, it's an act of war. Even for the Soviets, it was an insane gamble with a very real chance of ending all life on Earth. Ultimately, this theory suffers from being both too logical and too reckless to be truly believable for most people. And then we come to the man who benefited most directly, Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson. The theory paints LBJ as a power-hungry Texan who felt sidelined and humiliated by the glamorous Kennedy clan. Proponents point to his strangely calm demeanor in the chaos and how quickly he was sworn in as president aboard Air Force One, with a shocked Jackie Kennedy still at his side. They whisper about connections to Texas oil barons who hated Kennedy's policies. It's a Shakespearean tale of ambition and betrayal. However, it rests almost entirely on conjecture and interpreting people's reactions during a national trauma. Acting calm in a crisis can be seen as presidential composure just as easily as it can be seen as guilt. It's a compelling drama, but one that runs on fumes when it comes to actual verifiable evidence. No conspiracy buffet is complete without the CIA. Kennedy was openly hostile to the agency after the Bay of Pigs fiasco, reportedly vowing to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. This is not the sort of thing you say about an organization whose entire job is covert operations and plausible deniability. The theory suggests a rogue element within the agency, a deep state cabal, decided Kennedy was a threat to national security and had to be removed. The cherry on top of this conspiratorial sundae? When the Warren Commission was formed to investigate the assassination, who was appointed as one of its key members? Allen Dulles, the very same CIA director Kennedy had fired over the Bay of Pigs. You couldn't make this up. It's like asking the Fox to write the final report on the henhouse incident. The Warren Commission report, released in September 1964, was supposed to put all speculation to rest. It did the opposite. Led by Chief Justice Earl Warren, its mandate was less about finding the truth and more about quelling public panic during the Cold War. They needed a simple, non-threatening answer. A lone nut was perfect. A Soviet or Cuban plot could mean war. The commission selectively ignored witnesses, failed to properly investigate connections to organized crime and intelligence agencies, and constructed the magic bullet theory to make their single-shooter conclusion work. They didn't solve a crime, they performed a national calming exercise. By trying to force a neat ending onto a messy reality, they created a vacuum of doubt so vast that it's been sucking in new theories for over half a century. So why, after all these decades, does this story still grip us? Because the official version is profoundly unsatisfying. History is supposed to have weight, a sense of proportion. Great men, we feel, should meet their end for great reasons. A conspiracy, be it the mob, the CIA, or a cabal of aliens, gives the event meaning. It turns a senseless act of violence into a grand dark chapter of a hidden history. The idea that a figure who held the fate of the world in his hands could be erased by a confused loser in a warehouse is, in its own way, terrifying. It suggests that history has no rhyme or reason, that chaos is always just one rifle shot away. We don't gravitate toward conspiracies because we're crazy. We do it because we crave a story that makes sense. And the official story of John F. Kennedy's death simply doesn't feel like a story at all. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more historical insights. Thanks for watching, nerds!